In light of what we saw from T-Mobile US in terms of their earnings last week, we were having this conversation about actually that now giving them more leverage in this battle in terms of just how they can negotiate in this deal. Do you think that's kind of played into what we're seeing here now?
I think a little bit, Julia. You know, I mean, the reality is both carriers need scale. They need to move, let's say, closer on par with AT&T and Verizon.
Yes.
But I would say Sprint needs it a lot more than T-Mobile, and I think T-Mobile knows that.
Yeah.
Or Deutsche Telekom knows
yeah,
it.
Exactly. Right? And again, the headline there is Deutsche Telekom is said to see valuation as an obstacle in the last 72 hours.
Yeah.
So perhaps because of T-Mobile's results, they're having a second think about this now. Specifically, when you look at Sprint and its assets, its most valuable asset here is its spectrum, isn't it?
It's all about the spectrum, right? They have that 2.5 gigahertz spectrum nationwide. It's low enough that you can use it for regular cellular service, and it's high enough that you can use it for 5G, which is kind of where the world is heading right now. We all have LTE phones, but 5 years from now, it's all going to be about 5G. And I think as you look down the road, you need this. Any carrier looks down the road, they need the spectrum assets to pull that off. So that's a real crown jewel.
So SoftBank and Sprint can't monetize that spectrum on their own?
They could. So I think Sprint and T-Mobile, if this indeed is a botched deal, are going to have to figure out how to go it alone from here. And I think they both have adequate spectrum assets to do it. I think the issue with Sprint is how do you finance a build-out from here?
Gotcha.
This was always going to struggle, though, surely, with the regulators. I mean, I know we've been talking back and forth about this deal and whether or not it's going to take place, but when they tried to do this tie-up back in 2014, you had the FCC and the DOJ actually looking at this, and the whole thing was dropped. So why was this going to be different, or they were still going to face the same kind of regulatory battles that they faced a few years ago?
Well, I think they were looking at a Republican administration now and saying we may get lucky here, but really, when it comes to the regulators and what they're looking at, it's all about the consumer. And I think it's hard to argue that since that AT&T deal was botched years ago, that the consumer hasn't benefited. We have, right? Prices have come down dramatically.
Things have changed.
Yeah, so it really was, I think anyone who covers the regulatory side was looking at it and saying, not seeing a good chance for this deal to go through.